Welcome, my friends, to a reading of a story created by moi. It is called The Dome of Rath, a beautiful story of love, friendship, action, and, the most important part of any story, a few good laughs to keep you going. Without further ado, let us begin. Chapter 1. The Beginning. It all started on a dark, misty, delicious, delightful, delectable, delivering, elegant, formal, beautiful, crisp night. Meat was being beat at the local subway venues around the globe. Smithy, lord of the realm of the little hairy boys, was listening to Donald Trump's inauguration speech while reading the NBHS school rules. Rathbone was in his palace in the sewer. Bertie was at the park with binoculars watching little kids. Stapley was hacking the US military's nuclear missile system to sell it on eBay. Smithy finished reading the school rules and felt lonely and suddenly started to cry. All Smithy was thinking about was Rathbone's soft, sweaty dome. Boner was at home, and he reached for his fettuccine sub with extra mayonnaise, but as he was about to reach his beautiful hand over to the sandwich, a blinding light shone from his great glistening chrome dome. From the mount of his amazingly bright head stepped a shimmering holographic version of himself. "Greetings," said the stunningly sexy man before him. "It is time, Wayne," it continued, and Rathbone knew exactly what this meant. As sweat dripped from his dome, the holographic boner disappeared, and the palace throne room was as dark as the night sky once again. Bertram was enjoying himself. Not only was he getting a great view of the beautiful, plump, juicy, delicious little 5-year-olds on the playground, but he had a great big glass of prune juice to keep him comfortable up in the tall oak he was perched in at the park. He was just unzipping his trousers to masturbate when a voice sounded from his binoculars. "Bertie, the time has finally come, my friend." Bertie gasped and almost fell out of the tree as he zipped up his filthy pants and kept listening. "Come to my abode, I need you," the voice said, and the lonely principal's eyes widened as he realized this was the moment the gang had been waiting for all their lives. The binoculars fell silent again as Bertie climbed down with the grace of a panther, so as to not alert the beautiful children to his presence as he descended and set off. Smithy, lord of the hairy men, stood at the NBHS podium he had positioned in his bathroom. He was rehearsing the biggest and longest speech of the NBHS calendar. Even though the school had been closed for years now, he could not yet let go of the past. It used to be an honor to bore 12-year-olds out of their minds for 3 hours straight, once a year. Smithy was calling his friend Rathbone the Bright, not with the dome message this time, but with the telephone. Rathbone ran swiftly toward the phone, busting the small table it was resting on as he picked it up. His glorious, bright, sweating dome began to pulsate so much you could see the veins pulsing through his beautiful glowing cranium. "Rathbone," said Smithy. "That's Lord Rathbone to you," roared Lord Rathbone. Yes, I'm sorry, Lord Rathbone," Smithy apologized, "but I called to warn you, for he is returning." Suddenly, Boner's pupils dilated, and he realized exactly suddenly what he meant. "I see," he said solemnly. "We must call the secret order of the hairy men." "Yes, I've already rung Bertie. I'll see you two shortly," Smithy replied. As he hung up the phone, Smithy heard a knock at his door, and he went to answer it. "You came!" Smithy blushed at the sight of his dearest friend. "Yes, Smithy, it is I, Lord and former Principal Bertram." Bertie was holding flowers and wearing the flower shirt Smithy brought for him on one of his birthdays long ago. They embraced, and Smithy's snake-like tongue began exploring Bertie's soft, juicy, pumpkin pie, because sorry sir, this is a Christian fan fiction. I baked it just for you, Bertie said as he smiled wearily. Another sharp knock came from Smithy's back door this time. He ran to open it as quickly as he ran to work at Nike on a Sunday morning. It was John Stapley himself. John, how did you know we were getting the order back together again? Stapley sighed loudly. I hack military drones, Bruce. I see everything. Oh, I say, Smithy muttered as he hugged Stapley. And suddenly a massive crack rang out across the yard as Rathbone drove his 1930s Bentley through the fence surrounding Smithy's backyard. Rathbone leaned out the open window and said, I have arrived. As he opened the door, a pile of meatball subs fell out onto the grass. Stapley ran over and tried to grab a sub, but Rathbone roared, No! And slapped Stapley hard on the cheek before giving him an old NBHS code of conduct. Stapley started to cry, and his old wrinkly face was sore and red. As he ran over, Smithy softly whispered to him, You deserved it, my son. Suddenly the ground began to shake, and storm clouds arose above them. Oh no, Bertie said. It has begun. He is here. The moon shone through the thick clouds like a small child pressed up against the glass of an aquarium exhibit. A black car descended from the clouds like an angel and landed in the backyard, smashing apart Smithy's tin tool shed and pulling up in front of them whilst a light rain began to fall. Dogs began barking and the wind picked up, and the order stood there as the door slowly began to open. A short stubby leg came out, and a black silk cape hung around it. As the door opened wider, a lightning strike lit up the night sky, and the rain began to intensify. A dark figure came out. He was wearing a hood and had a scythe. He walked straight to Bertie, put his hand out and said in a gruff voice, Shake my hand. Bertie cowered in fear as the dark figure stood before him, and the pouring rain drenched his flower shirt. He slowly reached out and grabbed his hand, before gently moving it up and down slowly. The figure slowly removed his hood to reveal his face. The teachers all went to their knees in respect, as they were in the very presence of a god. Get out of your sandpit, men, said the Lord and Saviour Mr. Brown, as another bolt of lightning lit up the sky. Rathbone's dome began to grow dimmer, and his subways were all soggy. Shake my hand like a man, he roared. Brown, whimpered Smithy. Silence, Bruce. So, this is my replacement. I would say I'm insulted, but really that's a grave understatement. I walked the grounds of Napier Men's for millennia. I kept it safe during the war, and this is how they repay me? Please, Brown, Smithy whimpered. Just come inside, we'll fix you some tea. Enough! Brown whistled louder than a steaming train, and Smithy returned to his knees quickly. I will indulge in this beverage, and you will explain everything, Bruce. Brown turned to Bertie, his long cape flapping in the wind. I will deal with you later. With that, Brown marched towards the house and kicked down the door with prejudice. Really, Mr. God Brown? Do not say my name, Bruce. Brown marched straight into the house, and the others followed him closely. Bertie bowed his head as he opened the door for the living God standing before him, and followed the others into the room after them. Where is my throne, Bruce? Brown bellowed as he stood in the center of the room. I bored to death hundreds while sitting in that throne. He sharply turned to Smithy as the room quietened and the rain outside them came to a stop abruptly. Where is it? Brown muttered, giving Smithy a stare that could kill a unicorn instantly. Smithy stuttered, as the others closed around him condescendingly. I sold it, my lord. I'm sorry. Smithy lowered his head in shame and walked out of the room. As he walked out, he could hear Stapley and Bertie explaining what happened to the school after the incident. He sighed and sat on his race car bed, sponsored by Nike, and slowly looked around his dark, small bedroom. He had run. He had run, not looked back. Him and Brown used to be best friends, maybe even more than that, until he had run away. This mentality, Smithy thought. This is why it happened in the beginning. Someone entered the room. It was Sexy Stapley himself. It's okay, Bruce. We all know it wasn't you. You were just following orders. Smithy's eye twitched, and a small tear rolled softly down his cheek as Stapley walked over to his bed. They began to make apple pie, with a fiery passion that could only be described as remorseful. Smithy reached for Stapley's sugar to sweeten the pastry, but Stapley moved his hand away gently. "Not here," he whispered, with a wisdom unique to only him. Smithy smiled, and they both sat there and watched the stars out of Smithy's window. Meanwhile, Rathbone was munching on his 400-inch limited edition sub in the living room that had gotten delivered to the house when he arrived. Brown slowly walked towards Rathbone. "Rathbone!" he roared in a loud but soothing voice. "Not everyone is as perfect as me," Bonus said, "and unlike some people, I have something you don't." Brown narrowed his eyes and moved closer, but not too close. "Thousands and thousands of codes from the school of hairy little boys?" Brown inquired. "Perhaps," said Rathbone. "Do you remember the she-witch, Brown?" Boner asked. "We don't say her name here, Rathbone. This is a safe place. I did terrible things to keep that school safe for many years." A longing look pasted onto his face as he remembered. "We all did what we had to during the war, Brown." Rathbone put a hand on his shoulder. "Silence, Rathbone!" Rathbone stepped away, turned toward the window, and closed his eyes. "I'm sorry, old friend, but tomorrow some difficult choices will have to be made." A brilliant bright lightning bolt outside lit up the room, and Rathbone was gone. He had disappeared completely. Brown slowly walked toward the window and uttered the words, "I'm sorry, old friend." End of chapter 1.